Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode. My name is Dana. I will be your host, and our guest today is George Perez Diaz. Hello, George. How are you?
Hello, Dana. I'm doing great. Great. Thank you for inviting me and having me here to talk about such a critical concept to the defense industrial base, which is risk assessment and risk management.
Yes, as it applies to NIST 800, 171, and CMMC. So before we get started, why don't you just take a minute and share with everybody a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Goodness. Yes. George Perez Diaz, like you've mentioned, I go by George Perez Diaz. Some people call me George Perez Diaz, and my preferred name is George Perez Diaz. So, so that is my name. I am an Air Force veteran. That was essentially how I started my journey into information security, cybersecurity, and all things security. That long journey took me through military, of course, working with the Pentagon, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, helping them maintain and support critical systems for national security and nuclear command and control, essentially. After that, I decided to venture into the private sector. And that's when I really got to appreciate what information security and cybersecurity looks like. I was a business analyst for anything and everything information security and cybersecurity for a Fortune 500 company. In 2016, we were blessed with NIST 800-171. I was part of the project to implement NIST 800-171 in 7+ businesses and plants within this organization. A lot of fun. And after we successfully implemented that by the implied deadline that we had in DFARS, the defense, the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement 7012, as we all know it, December, I believe it was, of 2017, I was invited to manage and own that program. I was blessed with the opportunity to be assessed by the DIPCAC. And I say blessed because uh, I I feel that you don't know how well you're doing until you have an assessment, and what better way to validate that you're doing the right thing for national security and for the risk of your organization, financial risk or legal risk or regulatory risk. And then I decided to become a consultant to help more organizations rather than just one. I have a C risk certificate, which is controls risk. Uh, uh, wow. uh, the ISACA, the control, I'm sorry, that certified in risk and information security controls, and also assist a certified information uh, systems auditor. I also have a master's in IT and CCP for those in the CMMC space, certified professional, and also a registered practitioner. Again, thank you for having me. Like I said, it was going to be long.
See, there's too many acronyms. That's the problem. I remember when I first started learning about CMMC, and I thought, I don't even know what language we're talking. Everything is just a combination of letters all over the place. And so, believe me, I get half the time I'm like, wait, what is that? Let me think here. So
Yeah,
you and your
and it only
like,
expands that vocabulary because most organizations have their own acronyms, and as you go through the different agencies as well, it becomes a lot more fun. So yeah, brace yourself, take some notes, Google some of these things, and ping us if you have any questions.
all right. So we're going to dive right in. So again, we're talking about cyber risk management aspects of NIST 800-171 and CMMC. So our first question is going to be, why should organizations include a risk management strategy when implementing NIST 800-171 or CMMC?
Why? Well, there's different reasons why. The first one is that NIST 800-171 already assumes that you have a risk assessment or risk management methodology. And if you look at NIST 800-171 under the NFOs, the non-for-federal organizational requirements, I was not a big fan of the NFOs because to me it's one of those that if you're doing an implementation correctly, like NFOs, like the definition of NFOs, it is implied that you're going to achieve those things. So in the footnote, I believe it's footnote 17, page 18, something like that. If you Google NFO there, it tells you that a quality and resiliency, paraphrasing, CUI program depends on implementing those NFOs. And part of those NFOs is security, policies, procedures, implementing a program and plan to support an effective risk-based information system program or information security or CMMC, CUI program, however you want to fill that blank. Because of that, that is essentially your why. Our already CMMC thinks is NIST 171 thinks that you understand risk, and really you do understand risk as an organization. Any exercise that you start building your program or maintaining your program, you're looking for CUI. And that CUI is sensitive information that it considers sensitive at the moderate level for the confidentiality as it pertains to the DoD and national security / economic freedom, etc. That same risk that that sensitive information has on national security, it's a risk that it converts into financial loss, reputation, and all those good things that tells you that you have to understand the risk associated with accepting that information.
Mhm. Well, one thing I do think is number one problem is that you're right, that the assumption that a lot of these things is already being done because of NIST 800-171 is part of the big problem because it's being assumed that it's done because it's all self-attestation. Well, not all, but a lot. So that's our number one problem with getting into CMMC with having third-party verification. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. Okay, so our next question is going to be, so how can organizations incorporate risk management into their CMMC and CUI programs?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, we're doing risk management already by identifying that information that is sensitive and can do some damage to the organization or national security. So, as you're building your CMMC program, that is the first place where you want to intentionally document your process. Establish that process of if I'm going to look for sensitive things that are going to enter my organization and touch some systems, you start documenting what is it that I need to do with those systems that are going to be processing that sensitive information, and then that establishes essentially your program. So like I mentioned, the CUI comes in, you're looking at systems that are processing, storing, and transmitting your CUI. That's your CUI asset. Assign an impact level to those assets, right? And CMMC again invites you to do that with the asset categorization and classification exercise at the beginning of the scoping exercise and the assessment guide. And you're doing already these things. You're going to identify the systems that are close enough to the CUI, but that are not going to process CUI. Your contract risk management. Document that. Document why are you thinking that your CUI is a CUI system and ergo poses a risk to your organization? Why do you feel that a security protection asset or a control that you're going to implement to separate that CUI from the rest of your network or whatever the case may be, it's good enough? And why do you feel that those assets are going to be either in scope, out of scope, or CRMA? That's how you start building your risk management program. At the end of your exercise, most organizations are doing a gap assessment, right? And then they say, all right, here's the gap assessment, and now I have a gap remediation plan. Is that good? That is good, but it's just good enough. Once you have that gap assessment, do a risk assessment on those things that you don't have. Convert that to the risk of either passing an assessment or either understanding what a cyber event will look like if you and when you get hit by a cyber threat actor, and then start making those decisions thinking about risk.
And I think one thing, and this may sound like stating the obvious, but I think one thing when we're all putting these things through, because a lot of it is just the mindset of, okay, we have to do this so that we can get certified, right? We need to be able to check that box. And I think the
Yes.
more that we can get all of the people that are actually involved in the whole scope of, who's touching, who has access to what computer, what device, all that, the more we can create a cultural change around that. Of, listen, what we're trying to do is just protect this information. So let's
Thank
just talk about that.
Yeah. So essentially what you're saying, Dana, is that you have to embrace CMMC or the CUI program. That's what you're saying, right? That if and when you build these things and you go with the mentality that this is a checkbox, a checklist, or whatever the case may be, automatically you're failing your program, you're failing your employee, you're failing the DoD and the federal government in general. If you embrace it, you're going to see that it's actually going to give you meaningful information that you can actually maximize on other things because you're understanding risk. You're not just looking at IT ones and zeros and thinking that they're tens. No, you're looking at things specific to the business. How does this enable my business? How is this investment going to make sense and translate into other things that will make sense in the future? So absolutely, look at it from I have to embrace it. I have to do this. I want to do this. I want to grow my business with the federal government. And I mentioned federal government, not just DoD, because CUI is a federal program that eventually, quick enough, soon enough, is going to trigger into the other agencies. We're already seeing GSA doing these things. The Social Security Administration, DHS just mentioned its intention to move to a CUI program. So as you prepare for CMMC, that investment is going to capitalize if you're going to continue to be a federal contractor.
Are you having a hard time finding new customers? A lot of folks just like you in the IT and cybersecurity space are in the same situation. And they have embraced a new opportunity to get new clients. They're doing this by growing their online presence and maximizing the power of LinkedIn. How, you ask? I have a tried and tested method called my Cyber Social Program. I myself have been on LinkedIn and now have over 3.5 million LinkedIn views, and over on YouTube, I have over 750,000 video views. So I can show you exactly how I have done that so that you can promote your organization and become the authority in your industry. And the best part is, I've done all of this organically without one paid ad. You don't need to waste your money over on Google with pay-per-click ads. Now's the time to establish yourself. Look around. The competition isn't doing it. This is your time to shine online before they do. So if you're ready to start your online journey and future-proof your business, please, down below, click the link and schedule a time for us to have a 45-minute call where I can review the exact methodology of the Cyber Social Program. You can also click below to see some of my masterclasses, which will give you quick little snippets of a couple of things you can do right away on LinkedIn that will help with your profile. I hope to see you and hear from you soon. Yeah, and that's gonna be very important. And again, just embracing the whole thing and not just checking off the boxes, because if you do check off the boxes and you're not following it, you're going to get caught up in that anyway. That's not going to work. So,
Absolutely.
really embrace it, which is what we all need to do. This is a whole societal change that needs to kind of take place. And like you mentioned, it's going to be expanding into all the other branches of, of government. That's everything is going to wind up having either, I don't know if it's going to be CMMC specifically, but it's definitely going to, has CUI throughout it. So they're going to have to follow some kind of framework. So maybe they'll just keep it all the same. I don't know.
So it is NIST 100-171, right? And that's what CMMC writes on. It's validating that you've implemented NIST 100-171, again, with a risk-based approach. This organization has gone through the process of understanding risk and mitigating those risks for the organization itself and for the information that they get from the DoD. So is it going to be like CMMC automatically because CMMC, it's based on NIST 100-171? Yes, you're meeting the intent of the controls. NIST 100-171, as you know, Dana, I'm not, we just want to make sure that our audience knows NIST 100-171 is protecting CUI and non-federal organization. It's not just on DoD organizations and systems, it's non-federal organizations.
And that's a big point to bring up. All right. So now I want to talk about, the risk assessments, both formal and informal. So when should these be done? Let's start about that. When should they be done? How should they be done? That kind of
thing. Yeah. And I probably went a little bit ahead when I mentioned that as you're building your program, you can start doing your building your risk assessment, your risk management plan. But essentially that is your initial assessment. As you build in the program, you're either, or as you're finally realizing that you have to do this in a formal way, that will be your initial assessment. This is going to be the first one that you do. This is going to establish your baseline. This is going to be the one thing that generates that risk assessment, risk treatment plan. There's the Dominican in me. It comes out every so often. There's a risk management plan that comes out that invites an organization to start managing risk. It's going to be a spreadsheet. So sorry, risk managers that hate spreadsheets. It's inevitable. It's Microsoft Office, but it's something. You're going to have that list. You're going to start risk ranking those things and building that risk management program. That's essentially, as you're building the program, as you realize that you have to build this, that's your initial. You can do it during or after. A lot of the controls have essentially outputs. So for example, your continuous monitoring, which is something that my organization today, SP6, we're really big into building that program, continuous monitoring, continuous compliance. That's going to give you reports. It's going to give you data. What do you do with that data? You can either do nothing, or you can actually look at the report periodically and conduct a risk assessment. So that's another risk assessment that you can do, formal, informal. You can do it after you are building your SSP or as you review your periodic SSP. Okay, I look at my SSP, I go through each one of the controls. Um, I look at the controls objective, of course, and then I perform a risk assessment on those controls that are either weak or missing. And what is it that I need to do? The one, and this is one of my favorites because it's inevitably part of every organization, part of your change management or your acquisition process, right? As you go through this and you see that you don't have any a particular technology or capability within your enterprise, you're going to submit a change request because you need something. Do I have to build it? Do I go buy it? That's a great opportunity to have risk assessments from the get go and put it in the user's end. Put it on the bottom of your change request. This is going to be a significant change. Give us the systems that are going to be affected, the critical processes, for example, that are going to be affected, so that everyone involved becomes part of this thing. Right. So that's another risk assessment that you want to perform, or essentially your periodic one, which is the main reason why we're here. Risk assessment is one of those controls that the DIPCAT, the DIPCAT, Defense Industrial Base Cybersecurity Center, Assessment Center, has called out as one of the top 10 controls that are missing, that are that we're not doing correctly as an industry. So that one requirement is telling you create a program. Create a policy that tells you when to perform those risk assessments. Do it periodically. Define that periodic to either be once a year and or after each one of those reports, when you do a pen test, after you do your vulnerability scan, risk rank those vulnerabilities, etc. So those are different places where you can formalize your risk assessment, or you can do it informally.
Well, and I think one thing is that when everybody's left to their own, thought process as to what they should be doing for a risk assessment, to check
Yeah.
up on their own risk assessment, maybe there needs to be a little bit more. I mean, I don't really like a lot of rules and regulations and that kind of thing, but maybe
Yes,
there
you
needs
do.
to be a little bit more assistance with that, because I almost think it's the same thing with telling people, well, we should do tabletop exercises.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is a lot of people don't know how to do tabletop exercises. They might, but maybe if there was more of a specific, like, okay, here's one. Watch me do it. Now you go and, do it with your organization. So I don't know. That just made me was thinking about that during that.
No, yeah, that's a good point. And I think what's happening here is that organizations and people in general, we sometimes want to know the what, and sometimes we want to know the and and more often than not, we don't know which one we want and when we want it, or when it is too much or not enough. So yes, to your point on the tabletop exercises, just real quickly, CISA has a gigantic amount of beautiful, beautiful documentation, uh, use case specific, scenario based, and whatnot. So they can start those things. But that's a good point on how we can talk a little bit about that. That is actually a very lengthy conversation as far as let's document the process. And then once you document the process of what you're supposed to be doing, excuse me, it becomes a little bit more, oh, okay, so that's what I need to do. But if you look at it from what we were talking about, Dana, of do it at your change manager and your change request process, do it annually. Doing it, you're looking at your either let's focus on CMMC. You're looking at your CMMC program, you're looking at your SSP, and you're being intentional about what is it that you want to do? What is the purpose of this risk assessment? That's the thing, right? We have to sit down and look at it as an organization. Cannot be just George and Dana in their own little island thinking that we got this. No, we need SMEs, we need to identify critical stakeholders, the business, the people that own that data, the people that will execute on those DoD programs, programs, DHS programs. We need to understand that. And they also need to understand, oh, this is everything that is intel on that. And once you start defining the purpose, then you kind of go through the preparation and whatnot. NIST 830, lengthy, almost 100-page document, but it has a pretty nice uh, process laid out on how to conduct a risk assessment. That is essentially the process that we follow. And I'll check with my leadership, but what we can do, Dana, is give you something that we have in writing that we can share with you and your audience here, so they can leverage a high level process. And then if they want to go deeper, they can always reach out.
Yeah, that would be great. If you could send that over to me, we could put the link in the show notes, so then somebody could click on it and then they can get in touch with you if they have more questions or want to do a little bit more in depth.
Rock and roll. Yeah.
Okay, good, good, good. Okay, our last question here is, what is the end-to-end process for conducting an annual risk assessment to meet NIST 800-171 requirement? Well, we kind of just touched into that. They kind of like rolled together. So is there anything else you think we should throw in there as far as, the annual risk assessment?
Um, Probably yes, because we were talking about essentially very high level finding how to do it and organizing the organization on how to do it. Like I was mentioned, you prepare the organization. You have to have a purpose. You have to have the scope. So that's there you go. That's one that is critical. I mean, all the steps are critical, but NIST 171, that requirement for the risk assessment tells you perform periodic risk assessment to identify operational risk, and it tells you mission, function, and I can't remember the other ones, but that's essentially what's going to drive your scope. Are you looking to do a risk assessment at the entire enterprise? So if you're a larger organization with many SSPs and different cage codes, right? Those commercial and government assignment codes that tells you this is the contract that this particular plant or business is performing for the DoD space or any federal client. You can do it at the enterprise, which will include all of those SSPs or a subset of those SSPs. You can focus on the business unit itself, on a particular plant if you're in manufacturing, or you can even focus on just a single set of controls. So, what are those controls that are critical to my organization? What should I do there? I will do a risk assessment. That assessment, like I mentioned, is with your SMEs looking at it. And it could be, again, NIST 130 has really good examples on how to stress that the test on those controls. But it could be as easy as what is the worst thing that can happen if we are missing those controls, or if we have an internal threat event become real, and what do we need to do to prevent it? So you can start doing it that way. Once you look at your likelihood, your threat and vulnerabilities, one of the things that I recommend to keep it simple for our folks is the impact organization goes, George, I don't know what to do with the impact. You can use the value that DoD has given to each one of those controls, the 351, that says, all right, the fives are the ones, the controls that are now going to be allowed POMs, plans of actions and milestones. That could be your impact level. You'll have some assumptions there as far as the applicability of the controls and whatnot, and then you'll get some of that information. A good way to look at a risk assessment data, and a good example of how we are all doing risk assessments every day anyways, is if you are in a traditional, I commute to work every day, I have to walk to the metro to make it into the Pentagon, you look at your at the weather the night before, likely, and that morning. That's your threat intel. You're looking to see how that weather front is going to affect you. Is it going to rain? Yes. So how can I mitigate the potential risk of getting extremely wet? Or what is the level of wetness that I'm willing to absorb or consume, right? What is my risk tolerance? Do I want to get my hair, my head, my makeup, my shoes? I'm a shoes person, so I had to make that investment. Am I going to do it with an umbrella? Do I need to put a raincoat and an umbrella? Do I need to bring raincoat, umbrella, and rain shoes, rain boots, right? And then I'm covering my threat surface. Same thing you're doing here with CMMC. Think about the rain. Think about how loud it is. Think about the applicability. If you work from home, all that noise outside, it doesn't affect you, right? So that's also how you look at that threat landscape. The same is true for vulnerability. Sometimes you get those vulnerabilities coming in that says they're high, medium, or low. Doesn't apply to me because that high, I have so many controls around that system or those systems that high now it's a medium or even a low. So you have to look at those assumptions in that application and then select a methodology and the calculation you want to do. We recommend doing just your traditional high, medium, low on the impact to keep it simple. If you're a more mature organization that has already an enterprise risk management aligned to those are have already been defined for you. And like I said, we'll share something with the audience here so they can help themselves.
Well, this was really, really, really helpful. Thank you so much for all of your time and all of your expertise. I really, this is so helpful with everybody who needs to learn all about this stuff. And so thank you.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. We love what we do.
Good. Well, I appreciate this. And thank you everybody for watching. And we'll see you on the next episode. Until then, take care. Bye bye.
Yeah.
you.